Hi everybody, welcome to my channel Frugalisama. My name's Sam and this is where I talk about all things sewing. Today I've got a review of the Fennel coat from Mood Fabrics. If you've been watching any of my videos recently, I've got a series of videos up called Frugal Friday. Frugal Friday essentially is me looking at all the free patterns, discounts and giveaways that I find in the week. And very often there is a free pattern from Mood on there. So as part of my Make 9 challenge I decided that I really needed to sew up a Mood pattern and just see what they were like for their instructions, for the fit, just overall really, so that I could really recommend them with confidence. So what I'll do is I'll go into the design features and then I will tell you how it sews up and what the instructions are like, and then I will show you some pictures of me wearing it as well. So according to Mood, puffer coats are in this season now. I don't care what's in or what's out. I want warm and I want practical, and if I can get stylish as well then that's great, but I've always intended that this would be a dog walking coat. Just in time for the weather warming up, I've decided to go for one of the warmest jackets that I've ever made or even owned. I found this pattern round about December time and included it within my Make 9 plans in January time. And I did that because I actually found some quilted fabric in my local fabric shop, and it was only about £7 or £8 a metre, and they do recommend 4 yards of it, so I thought, well, £28, it's worth a gamble just to see what it sews up like. And my initial intention was to actually upcycle a jumper for the sleeves, because if you look at the artwork and the actual pictures on Mood, the sleeves are made out of like a jersey or something like that. They're made out of a different fabric to the quilted fabric, so the sleeves and the cuffs are actually made out of a different fabric. And I thought, what a great idea, I could do it as an upcycle challenge. But unfortunately I couldn't find anything in the charity shops that I could use to upcycle for the sleeves. So I decided that I was going to use some black jersey that I already had. Of course, when I came to cut it, I didn't have enough for the sleeves. So luckily there was enough to make the sleeves out of the quilted fabric. And in reality, I think it's better. I don't understand why you'd want a sleeve made out of a thinner fabric, because if you're wearing a quilted jacket, you're wearing it because it's cold, and the jersey wouldn't have been thick enough and warm enough. So in terms of a design feature, I did like the idea of the jersey sleeves, but in terms of practicality, I think the quilted sleeves are the way to go. I did find some ribbing, so I decided to use that on the collar and the cuffs. Features of it are that it's a long line with raglan sleeves. You've got a zip down the middle with a button flap that goes over the zip, and that's just to keep the warm in, keep the wind out. Then you've got a big square collar, and then you've got cuffs. So it's to the knees on me, and then the actual design is to have belt loops. They do sort of use a cord with belt loops on it. I really didn't want belt loops on mine. I've got a grommet machine and I put some grommets in, and I'll tell you a little bit more of my trials and tribulations with that in a bit. There are only actually 5 pattern pieces to this, and there are only 48 pages to stick together. There is no A0 option with Mood patterns. It is a sticking together job, unfortunately. They do seem to be a little bit lacking in basic information on things like that, I will say that. So there's no A0 option, and they don't actually inform you whether you're receiving an A4 or a US letter size file neither. You have to do a bit of guessing on that one. Now, I'm in the UK, so it's A4 that we use, and it did stick together okay. There were a few bits where I thought, I'm not 100% sure. So if you're in the US and you've downloaded one of their patterns, it doesn't have to be this pattern, but let me know below if they stick together okay, if you've used Mood before, and then I can inform people on the channel as well. In terms of it coming together, it was one of the easiest coats I've ever made, quite honestly. The inside and the outside are exactly the same, so it's fully lined. Let me just undo it. It's lined with the same fabric on the inside as it is from the outside. It is like wearing a duvet or a sleeping bag, if you like. The only thing that the instructions don't give you are for lining the sleeves. So essentially what I did was I made out the outer shell and the inner shell with exactly the same, and then I connected the sleeves by machine. There was no hand stitching in this at all. Sizing wise with Mood, it only gives you the actual size rather than the finished size. So the actual size range on this coat, and most of them actually are 32.5-inch bust up to a 55.5-inch bust, and a 24.5-inch waist up to a 49.5-inch waist. I'm a 37-inch bust, and I made the size 12 to 14. 12 to 14 is supposed to fit a 38-inch bust to a 39.5-inch bust, so I could perhaps have gone down. So that would have meant me going down a size range, really. So I wasn't prepared to risk it. But I have got plenty of room in there, so if you don't like things oversized, I would suggest going down a size in this one. It's quite difficult to judge whether the sizing is right or not on a coat, because you do want them a bit big. Especially a winter coat, you want them to be able to fit something underneath. So it is unusually constructed in the first step of sewing is actually joining the pockets. Then you sew your side seams, and then you insert your sleeves, and you put your cuffs on your sleeves, and that's when you insert your zipper. You insert your zipper before you actually insert your collar. The instructions on all mood patterns are in the form of a blog post, so there's no hand holding. What you see is what you get. And I think that in a way is a good thing, because you can actually see what instructions you're going to get, and you're going to be able to see whether that's going to be enough for you, enough hand holding for you or not. I printed all the instructions off without the pictures, and it's just fitted on one A4 side of paper. So that was enough for me. The only other thing I would say about the instructions is that you do need to read what's on your pattern pieces. For example, although there are only 5 pattern pieces, the front pattern piece, really, ideally, I think in most situations would be 2 separate pieces, but it's a good way of conserving paper, but you just need to have your wits about you. So I'm just going to show you here that here is an instruction that says cut for the right front, so only the widest bit is cut for the left hand side. You then need to fold it in. You can trace it off as well, it depends on your preference. Both the lining pieces and the right hand side are a much narrower piece, and that's what forms your placket on your left hand side, is that wider piece. So you just do need to have your wits about you that that's what you're going to do, that you're not cutting out 4 pieces that's too wide, or you struggle to get all your pattern pieces out of your fabric. And I think that's probably one of the things that they could do with explaining a little bit better on their website. It's not a criticism, the information is there, but I think you just need to have your wits about you, and I think it would be useful for them to actually point that out. All it needs is a sentence. The other thing is it's sewn with a 1/2-inch seam allowance, which I think is quite unusual. I think most of us are used to using either a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, that's UK and US. French and German patterns tend to come with 3/8 of an inch, or actually a centimetre, because they're on metric, as are we, but we tend to go by the inches. And then you might sometimes find 1/4 of an inch on pattern pieces, and that's very often patterns that are designed for knit fabrics. Other than that, it was one of the easiest coats I've ever constructed, really. It is a really, really straightforward construction. Even the insertion of the zip was straightforward. The only alterations really that I decided on making is to insert the tie within the coat. And that's because I would just lose it. There's absolutely no point me having belt loops with something like a thin piece of cord like this. I'd just lose it. So I took a look at some of the coats that I already owned, and decided on just making a channel. If you're going to do that, you need to know 2 things. Number 1, don't sew your channel first, because you won't be able to get your grommet machine in. Second one is pay particular attention to where you're putting your grommets. So after a lot of consideration, deciding where I was going to put my grommets, and I decided I was going to go on the inside, I then proceeded to do one on the inside and one on the outside, like a fool. So I've got a nice little designs feature there, because once I'd put one on the outside, I couldn't really go back on that one. So I've got a nice little air vent, shall we say. So whether I actually decide to pull that grommet out and sew over it or not, I don't know. Time will tell. I decided to put the snaps towards the edge rather than in the middle. Just that was just personal preference. If you look at the line drawings, they've actually gone more central than me. I just wanted them to avoid the zip. And the other thing is, I've just put these toggles on. I've pinched these off a coat that I already had, an old walking coat that I already had, and you can actually see the lining poking through, but once you slide those toggles up, it kind of hides it. So That's a double purpose one, and it stops me from losing those cards as well. Without that cord in the middle, it is a big, loose, baggy coat. For me, for my personal taste, it needs that tie in the middle. So in terms of cost compared to buying the fabric from Mood, I think they were selling similar fabric. I've absolutely no idea how it compares in terms of quality, but the quilted coating, if you look at it on the Mood website, looks almost identical to what I've bought. But in terms of thickness, I really don't know whether it's the same thickness or not. They're selling it at $19.99 compared to the largest size on the Mood website, which it would have cost you $214 if you bought the stuff from Mood. So definitely worth shopping around. In terms of how much fabric I used, I actually bought 4 meters rather than 4 yards. Because I cut the sleeves out, there wasn't a great deal left, because I did double sleeve. So I probably used a lot more than what was recommended. The only other little caveat I will say is for the ribbing, you just need to, rather than blindly follow the pattern, you just need to sew it together and make sure that your ribbon is going to fit over your cuffs. Let's have a close-up so you can see. So I took probably a good inch off this cuff just to make sure that it's going to fit me snugly around the wrist. And it's still quite loose, you can see there, I've got it upside down obviously, but so don't just blindly follow that pattern, you just need to make sure that it's going to fit around your wrist. I've got really skinny wrists before you start sewing it in. And whilst I've got it in my hand, I'll show you it inside out. There's your sleeve lining all sewn in by machine. If you don't want a coat that's quite so thick or heavy, you could swap out the sleeves with just a normal lining fabric, or you could do the whole entire lining in a normal lining fabric. That way you've got something a little bit lighter weight for spring coming up in the UK, or if you're in a hotter country. So I've just bobbed it on the mannequin inside out so that you can see how neat and tidy the inside of it is, apart from my little design feature here with the grommet. It makes for a really nice professional looking coat. I mean, honestly, for £28 I couldn't buy anything as nice as this, or as warm or as practical really. The only thing I would say is the hem. You can see on the inside here that the hem is actually done in one continuous length, and I'm going to go back in now, I think, and just hand stitch at the seams there. I'm not going to hand stitch all across, I don't think. I'm just going to hand stitch at the seams just to keep it together so it doesn't flap about. And also on the actual line drawings, you can see that they went all the way up with the poppers. I decided against that because I don't think I'll ever wear it all the way up like that. I tend to get a bit claustrophobic really, so I've left that off. But there's always the option to put that on afterwards if you want to. So one last little thing I'll show you whilst I've got it off the mannequin is the pockets. I went for some gingham that I'd left over from a project, so it's up to you whether you decide to go for something that stands out like that or whether you want to just go for a plain colour that's not quite so obvious. You could also add an inside pocket, or I've seen pockets on sleeves, you know, a bit like the sienna. You could put a pocket on the sleeve there. Don't know what you keep in it, your fags, a phone, I don't know. I can guarantee if I've had a pocket on there, I'd lose everything out of it. Although it's the first time that I've sewn with them, there'll be lots and lots of people out there that have already sewn with Mood before. So if you're unsure, go onto Instagram, have a look and see if there's an hashtag for it, see if anybody's sewn it, see if they've got any comments. Might be a blog post. I couldn't find anything for this coat because it was only released in December. So some of the older patterns, you might be able to find something. So for example, if you wanted to sew a dress for the Frugal Frocks challenge that Rowan and I are holding, have a look on Instagram, just Google it and see if somebody's written a blog post to see what you think. So I can't actually comment as to whether the sizing is accurate or not, because with it being a coat, it's big, but it's not too big. So it's quite difficult to say that the sizing is accurate. So overall, a positive experience from me. The instructions were fine, everything came together absolutely fine. There are instructions on the pattern pieces that you just need to look out for. Other than that, absolutely fine, and I would definitely recommend using Mood for your frugal frocks. That's it from me. If you've got any questions or if you've got any comments about either this coat or the challenge, leave them below. I'll leave a link to my video where I talk more about the Frugal Frocks challenge if you're wondering what I'm talking about. If this is your first time here, so let me know below if you've used a Mood pattern below and which one it was, and if you could recommend it, if you've had a positive experience as well. If this is the sort of video that you like, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you click the notification bell. That will tell you when I've got new videos out. Usually I record on a Friday with the Frugal Friday videos. During the week I've usually got hints and tips. And then on a Sunday, I usually do reviews and plans and makes. The next Sunday will be my February makes video. But thank you for watching, and I shall speak to you later. Bye.